Welcome to the Skinny for Friday, January 16th, 2026. My name is Ray Roa. I am the editor-in-chief at Creative Loafing Tampa Bay, holding the studio down this morning as my co-host and show co-founder Mitch Perry is exiled in Tallahassee covering the 60-day legislative session that kicked off this month. Later in the show, we'll hear from Luis Salazar, the president of the Hillsborough County Democratic Party's LGBTQ plus caucus. He's running to flip the House seat District 64, currently occupied by Democrat-turned-Republican Representative Susan Valdez. And staying with local elections in the second half of the show, we will also hear from St. Petersburg Councilman Richie Floyd, who will run for a second term representing District 8. But first, I do believe we have Mitch Perry on Zoom for a sign of life check. Mitch, are you there?
Good morning, Ray.
Morning, Mitch. Thank you for being here. And sorry you're not here, but also very hyped for you to be up there and enjoying the coverage already from the Florida Phoenix, where you are the senior correspondent. How is it going up there? Do you want to quit and come home yet?
Well, I was going to complain about the cold, but I guess it's pretty frigid down in the Bay Area this morning as well. Yeah. Well, interesting first 3 days. And by the way, they worked 3 days and taking today off and got a, holiday on Monday. So nobody knocking themselves out with work this first few days here in the legislative session. Kind of interesting, Ray. The kind of symbolism of the opening day on Tuesday when the governor gave his State of the State address, much made by the press up here about the fact that while he shook the hand of Senate President Ben Albritton, he snubbed House Speaker Danny Perez, just totally blew him off. And it was quite evident. And, hours later, the media was talking to Perez and asking him what was going on there. And he, Perez said flat out, says the governor wants to be petulant and not shake the hand of a partner. That's on him. Not going to change our direction. So that frostiness that we saw last year between the House and DeSantis, I don't know if that's going to persist. By the way, the governor boasted about Hope Florida in his speech, kind of defiantly, in terms of talking about how no harm there. There is potentially harm. Of course, we know that investigation still theoretically going on. Let me just tell you what I covered yesterday, Ray. A couple things. One was there was the bill for the fourth year in a row. The Florida House voted to repeal one of the provisions of the 2018 Marjorie Stoneman Public Safety High School Act, which was passed in the wake of the Parkland shooting. Nicholas Cruz, of course, the terrible incident there on Valentine's Day in 2018. And so the House has voted to reduce the age to purchase a long gun from 21 years of age to 18. But it's like deja vu all over again because, again, the Senate has not filed a companion bill and it's going nowhere. But I guess it's important for the House to show that, this is this is where they're at on the Second Amendment rights kind of thing. So it was kind of weird writing about it, watching it, because it's happened the last 3 years in a row. It's the same thing. It's not going to become a law. Now, what else happened yesterday? Oh, it's interesting. And I wrote about this yesterday before the session began, Ray, and that is, two of the biggest things that really we're talking about, and we've been talking on the show the last few months, are congressional redistricting and property taxes, right? That's what DeSantis has been pumping for months that he wants to do. And yet neither is going to probably be discussed in the actual next 60 days. Well, I shouldn't say they're not going to be discussed. Anything's going to happen on them. We already know that redistricting has been set aside for in April for a special session, right?
Right.
Property taxes is still a thing happening amongst the House. I covered a hearing yesterday. So there are now at least 5 proposed constitutional amendments that are still going through the committee process in the House that could potentially show up on our ballots in November. This one that I covered yesterday is one that was sponsored by Representative Monique Miller. And what it would do is basically it would gradually increase the homestead exemption for non-school related property taxes by $100,000 each year for 10 years. So it wouldn't be cold turkey, but basically, you could add on to the current exemption you already have if you are a property owner right now. And she said that because the median home price in Florida is roughly $350,000, most Floridians would have zero ad valorem property taxes by the year 2030. Okay, so this thing passed. And but again, the Senate has not filed any companion bills for all of these House measures. And Governor DeSantis has kind of hinted that he maybe like to see the legislature to deal with this later on. The Senate seems to be agreeing with him. They both agree, DeSantis and Senate President Alpern, that they want just one constitutional amendment for voters to vote on property taxes in November. Again, the House has 5 going through right now, but there's no equivalent in the Senate. So, right, I think these things are going to die out in the House, actually. And it's weird. So you have a lot of big bills that are moving in one chamber and aren't going anywhere in another. One other bill I'll mention, and that is, and this is something I don't cover. So I was talking to my colleague, Jay Wagmeister, yesterday, who covers education, this big issue with school vouchers, right? Which I know, a lot of folks have a problem with in Florida, the way that it's gone about over the years and really went into supersonic levels a couple of years ago. So there is a bill that Senator Don Gates filed, and that's already passed because, we've had committee meetings in the last couple of months. So even though the session officially began on Tuesday, there's actually been bills that have been moving in the process the last few months. So anyway, this bill passed on this week regarding school voucher accounting shortfalls. There was an audit of the school's voucher program late last year that found that the money was not moving the way it was supposed to. The audit concluded that, quote, funding did not follow the child, which of course is contrary to the phrase that is used by school choice proponents that tax dollars should be allocated to students, not schools. So the bill by Gates would establish much clearer application scholarship acceptance deadlines and boost competition among scholarship funding organizations, which they actually manage the flow of the money from the state to the schools and provide basically more oversight. So there's not really much oversight going on here, and there's maybe some corruption going on here. So that is something that we're going to see. But again, the House has not filed a bill yet. They're supposedly going to do so. That would be along the lines of what Senator Gates's bill is. Again, this is really trying to make sure that there's much more accountability, which critics have been saying for years on this whole school voucher program, where basically any parent now can get up to, I think, $9,000 if they choose to send their child to a private charter school or homeschool their child. So those are some of the things that happened this week that were pretty significant. And then on a political front, of course, Monday, the week began with Jay Collins, right? We've been talking about.
Finally, he's made a decision.
He has finally. It's like, I think maybe the PAC that's been giving him money said, dude, come on, do something here. And so he announced on Monday that he's in the race for the Republican race nomination for governor, where Byron Donalds, as we've talked again about, it looks like $45 million he's already raised right now, hasn't aired a single commercial, and is just dominating the polls. Interestingly, Ray, we saw our first Democratic poll this week between David Jolly and Jerry Demings.
Yeah.
And the poll basically, I think the big story of that poll was that most Democrats don't know. Yeah. 58%, right, said that they don't know who they're going to choose. I would say it wasn't not a good poll for David Jolly. It showed Jolly leading, but just by 4 points, 23-19 over Jerry Demings, who we know just got in the race a couple of months ago, hasn't really done much campaigning so far. Jolly, and certainly in our neck of the woods in the Tampa Bay area and in Central Florida, has been all over the place, not doing any ads, but basically just going in front of big groups of people. And yet he hasn't really, he's got only a few point lead right now over Demings. That doesn't really augur well for him. But again, the big story of that poll was simply that, a lot of people just don't know who these guys are right now and aren't really focusing on it. And it is only January, of course. So a lot of time to go on that. So, I would say, Ray, none of the weird bills or kind of bizarre bills or even, sexy legislative bills, I haven't really seen that so far, but Those are coming, and some of them are going to be controversial. Some of them are going to be kind of culture war stuff. Again, I just got an email from Equality Florida, who's having a press conference next week. They are definitely coming out talking about some bills that they are really worried about that are going to be introduced, in some cases reintroducced, that haven't gone far in previous sessions. So
Right on.
We'll see. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Mitch, we really appreciate you taking the time to check in with us at the top of the show. We hope to do this in all the coming weeks. It's always great to hear your voice on the radio with us here, and it's really great to be reading your reporting.
Ray, I want to say before we go, I want to congratulate you. I saw the big news about Creative Loafing yesterday, and I'm really happy for you. And, I don't know if you want to talk to the listeners about that, but big news for Creative Loafing in terms of the ownership there.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mitch. Mitch is an ex-loafer, and yesterday a group of current employees and 2 new partners completed the sale of Creative Loafing Tampa Bay. We bought the paper back from our corporate owners in San Antonio, Texas, and are looking forward to the next chapter of bringing independent, locally owned media to all of our readers and partners, and we're just so hyped. So thank you so much, Mitch, not just for the congratulations, but for laying the groundwork. I know you're the only guy who would ever show up, I think, earlier than me in that old office. The 4 a.m. stories of Mitch Perry coming in definitely fueled me to work hard. So thank you so much.
Well, hey, it's great to talk to you. Great to talk to our listeners. Hope everybody enjoys the MLK holiday weekend coming up, and have a great show.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mitch. Talk to you next week. So moving on here today, and I hope for many of the weeks to come with Mitch in Tallahassee, we welcome Valerie Smith to the studio. She is the editor-in-chief at the Bay Area's Sapphic Sun publication, which is a member of the Tampa Bay Journalism Project, of which WMNF News also participates. Valerie is also a contributor at Creative Loafing Tampa Bay, where over the last week she's been following Border Patrol. They held a recruitment event last Tuesday at St. Petersburg's Carillon Park Hotel. I never know quite how to pronounce that. Valerie, welcome back to The Skinny.
Thank you.
Really glad that you're here. Valerie, we'll also act as a co-host in the second half of the show, and we'd certainly welcome your phone calls and emails, 813-239-9663, and you can email us at dj@wmnf.org. We'll also take text messages at 813-433-0885. Before we go inside this Border Patrol recruitment event, Valerie, can you describe the protest that you saw outside?
Yeah, this was by all accounts a typical standard issue Tampa Bay area liberal protest that there was nothing too unusual about it.
Those
except
libs.
For yeah, there they were. There was nothing quite unusual about it except for the number of police there. There were probably about 100 protesters, and I would say nearly as many officers, half St. Pete Police Department, half Pinellas County Sheriff's Office deputies. So there was a good mix there, and then there were a couple of DHS police mixed in, and I believe they were there probably at the request of the hotel to sort of defend that private property and defend it from anyone, walking into the parking lot or blocking traffic from getting in. But there were 2 arrests at the protest. That was well after I was there. That was the following day. But there were 2 people arrested who were both in the parking lot, and that's why they got arrested.
Yeah, and we should, make clear, obviously, we're talking about Border Patrol and, ICE a lot. ICE, obviously, involved in the tragic killing of Renee Good up in Minneapolis. But there is a distinction between ICE and Border Patrol, correct?
That's right. So ICE does a lot of internal operations, and historically, Border Patrol has largely operated at the border, but they do have a 100-mile radius from the border in which they're allowed certain powers, and all of Florida falls within that 100-mile zone. So technically all of Florida is within Border Patrol's jurisdiction, but we haven't seen necessarily a lot of Border Patrol down here, but Border Patrol has been going inland a lot more. Where ICE might be doing some of these raids and things we see, Border Patrol is known for some of its flashier raids. You might have seen Border Patrol agents rappelling out of helicopters into apartment complexes or jumping out of the back of a U-Haul van. And Border Patrol is also responsible for a lot of crowd control, so suppressing any protests that are going on. A lot of the guys who are shooting pepper balls and tear gas, those are Border Patrol agents, whereas ICE, they tend to be blending together now, but historically ICE has been more focusing on specifically immigration enforcement.
And Border Patrol, of course, led by Greg Bovino, a guy we could probably devote like a full 30 minutes or an hour to talking about. Okay, I want to go inside this Border Patrol recruitment event, but before that, I wanted to clarify for listeners and our readers at Creative Loafing that you and we did try to get credentialed as press for this event, but we were unsuccessful there. And after consulting a few professional associations for journalists, we decided on registering, going to the event as an attendee, asking questions of the recruiters at the booths to understand these recruitment tactics better. And if asked if we were a member of the media, you would not lie about that. Although nobody asked you.
No, I was asked very few questions. And in fact, I was told the answer to a lot more questions than I was asked. This was certainly my motives for being there were not questioned once.
Wow. Okay. All right. So let's get in here. I mean, was it weird walking in as a reporter? I mean, obviously you're kind of used to doing stuff like this, and you're used to getting in there and doing a story. We want to know what it's like. But what were you feeling in your body? Was it nerve-wracking? Was it scary? To move from the protest outside and all of that energy into the hotel?
So I actually couldn't see the protest outside from the parking lot, the walk-in. The only thing I could really experience from the protest was the sound. People had bullhorn sirens, things like that. But I walked on into the hotel, the Hilton in Carillon Park. And when I got there, I didn't have a strong gut feeling of nervousness or anything, but I did expect to be waiting in line for a while. But I was surprised there was no line. There was one security guard who asked if I had any knives. I said no, and I
no
walked
metal
forward.
Detector, no nothing like that.
They did eventually
okay.
have a metal detector, but that was at the beginning of a long maze that I expect would have been a line had there been a lot of people there.
So are you saying it wasn't that well attended, or like how did you feel? Obviously, it's the ballroom down there.
Well, I suspected it wasn't well attended at first, and then I went on through the process and found that a lot of the people who were there were actually in a sort of back room doing applications in this big room full of tables and laptops. So there were quite a few people there, maybe not as many as they expected, judging by the amount of line space they had prepared, but there were probably about 90 to 100 people that I saw while I was there.
Okay, and let's talk about the Office of Professional Responsibility. I think you went to that table, right? So you're going to all these tables, there's all these jobs, because it wasn't just for Border Patrol, it was law enforcement, recruitment, and things like that. So there was a large, contingent of stuff like that. So, Office of Professional Responsibility, it's this investigative arm of Border Patrol, correct?
Yeah, they're basically internal affairs for Border Patrol, and my experience with the Office of Professional Responsibility, or OPR as I'll call them, is my experience with them was very much what I would expect from a federal agency. It was pretty professional, although one standout is that they did have a pamphlet which showed some of the crimes that you might be investigating as an internal affairs member at ICE. And it listed some pretty shocking things: money laundering, corruption, fraud, use of force, child exploitation, human trafficking, human smuggling, drug smuggling, cyber crimes. And so I talked to the recruiter and I said, are these crimes that you're investigating CBP agents for? And she said, well, yes, you're investigating allegations. And she really stressed the word allegations in our conversation.
Well, that's good. Somebody's checking up on allegations over there. So, in the story, you were not offered a job with OPR, but I think that was a little bit different in Border Patrol. Can you talk about the proximity, like how much time lapsed after that OPR conversation when you got to the Border Patrol desk, which felt a little bit more like a military recruitment, correct?
Yeah. So on my way out from OPR, I did run into someone who was saying, that their film career hadn't panned out, and so now they were pursuing this OPR. And I walked away during that conversation, and I browsed a little bit. It was probably about 10 minutes later that I wound up at the Border Patrol desk, and 30 minutes later, I was out of the building. I started out at the Border Patrol desk. I got my hand shaken by whoever this full-time recruiter I was working with was, and he answered a lot of my questions, and then he cut me off before I could finish asking them, so I had to go back and finish asking them later. I asked him if I would be able to work locally, because I'm curious, is Border Patrol trying to beef up its numbers locally? What's going on there? And he said that probably not. And he started to talk about ICE, and he was saying, maybe if you wanted to recruit with ICE, they might have some jobs locally. And then he cut himself off and said, well, ICE isn't really here because they don't really need to be here.
And that's something that you kind of unearthed, like you've been, poking around the Pinellas sheriff and Bob Gualtieri. Everybody has opinions about the sheriff over there, but he's a pretty straight shooter per se. Like, he says it how he calls it. And he's previously said that he believes local law enforcement's participation in these controversial 287G agreements have kept the agency from targeting Florida cities. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And he is most of the time a straight shooter. I will say outside of the protest, he was trying to calm the crowd by saying, you're protesting ICE and this is Border Patrol. And I think that that's becoming an increasingly useless distinction as the two of them are intertwined in so many of their abilities. But in this case, I believe he was a straight shooter. Bob Gualtieri said that he believes that local law enforcement's participation in 287G agreements with ICE have kept the agency away from targeting our Florida cities, which seems to be supported by other law enforcement professionals.
So the sheriff was on site the other day?
The sheriff was at the protest, so was Chief Anthony Holloway, so was the general manager of the hotel. They were all bunched up and talking with one another.
Okay. By the way, if you're just joining us, the voice you're hearing belongs to Valerie Smith, editor-in-chief for St. Petersburg-based Sapphic Sun and a contributor for Creative Loafing. Over the last week, Valerie has been covering the Border Patrol recruitment event held last Tuesday in St. Petersburg, going as far as to attend for journalism. You can join the conversation by calling us at the studio, 813-239-9663. Anthony will definitely get you in the queue to ask a question. You can send a text to 813-433-0885 or email dj@wmnf.org, just like Donald here. Donald just mentioned he wants to know what became of the $10 million redirected by the governor's wife for the amendments. And he's talking about Hope, Florida. And I'm sure we'll dive into that a little bit more in another show as that investigation keeps going. Valerie, I want to ask you about some of the questions that they asked you and what they told you would be paid, and kind of how you feel like they're attracting people to come work for Border Patrol, because obviously if you walk in, you're somewhat interested. But what is the sell like? What do we know about what they're telling potential Border Patrol agents?
Well, if you've ever been to a military recruitment event or even seen those tables that might be in a high school or college cafeteria, it was very similar to that experience. They really try to rope you in as much as they can with these. Their job is to be there and to recruit you to get you to sign up. So they asked me how old I was. And when I answered, the man said, well, you're going to retire at 49. And he said, how many years of full-time experience do you have? And he said, if it's more than 3, then we'll start you at an even higher salary grade. And I said, well, I've never been law enforcement, military, anything like that. And he said, well, it doesn't matter. You've got Walmart, you've got Walgreens, wherever you worked.
These are all the places that you've worked.
Not quite, but he brought up Walmart, Walgreens. I had a little more experience as a software engineer, right, on my resume, but he didn't ask about any of that. He just asked if I had full-time experience. So I told him that I had full-time experience. He said I would start in a higher salary grade. He said after just 115 days of training, you will be out on the street, or you might be in an administrative role, whatever really you prefer. And I'm assuming by the street, he meant that I would be deployed somewhere on the border, but he could have meant the streets of Minneapolis, as we saw, 800 Border Patrol agents were just deployed there as well.
Wow. I want to ask you about this qualified immunity thing. Why do you think that recruiter brought that up? Qualified immunity, of course, is a theory, that allows cops to do their job without having to let accused criminals go out of fear of liability if they make a small procedural error. The ACLU, we should note, says it often allows police brutality and civil rights violations to go unchecked. How did that topic come up, and what was that sell like?
I asked about liability insurance, personal liability insurance. I wanted to know if I am accused of anything, or if I injure someone and they sue me for medical bills, what happens then? But I didn't get any further than asking the words personal liability insurance before he interrupted me. He said, so you'd have qualified immunity. And he said those words to me, and he explained that if you are doing your job in the government and you are acting in, he gestured vaguely and said good faith, which is to say within the bounds of your job. If you're acting within good faith, then you are pretty much immune from prosecution and liability. He said you have the entire federal government behind you, not in front of you.
Wow. So I guess, you're here at a job fair. I guess everybody wants to know, did you apply for a job?
I did not come expecting to apply for a job that day. As I was having this conversation with this recruiter, he told me to fill out this form on his laptop. So I filled out the form and I said, doesn't mean I have to apply for a job, does it? And he said, no, it doesn't. He joked, we're not the military. And so he then...
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, right. And then he said, all right, now come with me. And he walked me to a back room that had a big, I think about 80 laptops and tables there. And he said, you're here to apply for a job. Let's apply for a job. So he sat me down at a computer, handed me off to another recruiter, and I was starting the recruitment process. And the way that started was I created an account on usajobs.gov. And then the recruiter who was in there with me, no longer the Border Patrol recruiter, this is a different guy now, he basically finished the application process for me. He opened up this website that had been open for the previous applicant, where you put in your job title and it comes up with a list of responsibilities. It's an AI-generated resume website called livecareer.com. And so he entered software engineer. He had to erase the previous guy's job title. A club bouncer had been applying before me for the role. So he erased that. He put in software engineer. And he said, just make it sound as fancy as possible. It came up with about 65 job responsibilities, which when I craft a resume, I'm usually putting 3 to 4 responsibilities per job. But it came up with 65 options that I could click to add them into my compiled list of responsibilities for this job. And he said, just click them all. And I said, all of them? He said, yeah, click them all. So I read them one by one to make sure this was indeed a responsibility that I had. And after I'd gotten through about 5 or 6 of them, he said, you can just click them all. And he said, according to America, you, as a software engineer, have done all of these things. You are a rock star. And then he selected all of them for me faster than either of us could read them.
This guy seems pretty friendly.
He was really friendly. Everyone there that I encountered was very friendly. They all had big smiles on. They all were my biggest fans and my best friends for that day.
As it should be at a recruiting event, I suppose.
Right, because that is their job. They're trying to get more people in the door. I will say with the Office of Professional Responsibility, it seemed a little more professional. And they had more of an attitude of, give us your resume, and if we see a job that suits, that resume you give us, we'll give you a call and talk about next steps. But here, my resume was generated for me, and I mean, you'll be able to see this resume in the article. It is little more than a header with a paragraph of job responsibilities. I mean, more than a page of job responsibilities, and it is unreadable. I can't imagine that there will be a human at any step of this process reading this resume.
Wow.
After that portion, we got to the application, where my recruiter, who was helping me fill out this resume by generating it for me, he ran through all of these questions. He tended to summarize most of the application questions. There was one section where it asked for sort of a short essay type answer on how do you feel about the Constitution? And he just told me, just write, I'd prefer not to answer in all of these fields. So I wrote that, and then he asked me, have I ever had sex in jail? Was I born in the U.S.? Am I willing to use lethal force? Have I ever smoked weed? And all of these questions really were briefly summarized. There was one that asked if I was willing to encounter people experiencing extreme poverty and personal hardships, such as separation from family, witness drownings, vehicle accidents, and other tragedies. And then there was just this lengthy list of these are the risks that you encounter on the job. And it was very detailed. And I mean, it got graphic. And instead of reading that question to me, he just said, do you acknowledge that this is a tough job? So I said yes, we moved on. And there was one part that I really want to highlight here, which is that I was asked if I would like to enter on duty before my background investigation was complete. And that means basically enter the training phase before your background investigation is complete. And this is something that's been going on for a couple of years in Border Patrol, and I don't know if it's been going on in ICE, but it is now. You can get a provisional clear status on like an initial scan, and then once they complete the final background check, then they could just pull you if anything comes up.
Wow. Valerie Smith. So long story short, are you going to be a Border Patrol agent soon?
I was told to expect a job offer within a few weeks, and I was told that if I don't get a job offer, I will be deemed ineligible, in which case I need to fix whatever makes me ineligible and apply again next month. So those are the two options. There is no, we liked your application, but not your resume. There's nothing like that. If you qualify, you're in. And if you're ineligible, you can fix it.
Wow. Valerie Smith, editor-in-chief at the Sapphic Sun, contributor for Creative Loafing Tampa Bay, where this story will be posted today. Hopefully, just got to clear a few more hurdles for that story. Thank you so much for describing that and for your reporting there. And what do you think is next for this story here as far as Border Patrol and ICE locally here?
Well, there's another journalist, Laura Jadid, who reported something similar. Her experience with an ICE recruitment event, which went similarly, except that they also had a interview on site that day. So this reporter, Jadid, applied for a job and accepted that provisional clear status and said that if I get a provisional clear, then I would like to enter on duty before my background check is complete. And so they accepted that, and she actually was offered a job and given an enter on duty date and was allowed to enter on duty if she so desired. So that is a story that's gotten some national attention. I would recommend reading that as well to get an inside look at sort of what ICE is doing. And we might see some outcomes of this. If they're lowering their standards, then Border Patrol and ICE could get sloppier. They could get worse. So we'll have to see what sort of happens in that avenue in the coming months.
Awesome. Valerie Smith, thank you so much for that reporting. Valerie's going to stay with us as we move into the last parts of the show here, which will serve as ballot updates of some sorts. I know Richie Floyd is on the horn, and we'll hear from him at the tail end of the show. But right now, in studio, we have a guest. So these elections are coming up sooner than anyone wants to admit. And one of the races we're all watching is the one for State House, the District 64 seat specifically. That one currently occupied by a Democrat turned Republican, Representative Susan Valdez. Hoping to flip that seat is Luis Salazar, the president of the Hillsborough County Democratic Party's LGBTQ plus caucus, and a somewhat frequent guest on the show. Luis, welcome back to The Skinny. Thank you to have you here with a healed foot. Last time your foot was in pain.
Broken, actually.
Yeah. Is it better? Is it healed?
It's a lot better, and thank you for having me back. It's always fun being here and talking to you and being candid and a safe space, as we can call it, right?
It is a safe space with all of our listeners on the other end of this microphone. But as we know, in this 40 plus years community radio experiment, it really is a community that we have here. So we're glad that you're here. The last time you were here, you hinted that something might be up. Why didn't you just say it then? And why now?
I wasn't ready yet. It takes a lot of your life to run for office. And before we go into that, I just want to say thank you, Valerie, for taking the courage to do what you did and go into those spaces. I grew up on the border of Arizona, 30 minutes from where all this stuff happens. I'm all too well aware of what Border Patrol is, how it works, customs, immigration, ICE, all that stuff. And it's a tough world. I myself have been pulled over 5 times here in Hillsborough County by ICE. It is nerve-wracking. It's scary. It's something that we all don't want to deal with. But fortunately, I grew up on the border where I dealt with it every day. And this is something that is being forced in America's faces right now. And it's sad to say that we are turning our cities into war zones, and it's not cool. And this is not who we are, and this is not what we fought for. I myself am a Navy veteran, and this is not the America I fought for and the freedoms that I wanted to see for my people. And that's part of it, right? I walk around my neighborhood in my district, and I see people with tarps on their roofs from hurricanes that happened 2 years ago. And that's not how government should work. I've worked for the Hispanic Services Council, where I saw firsthand how immigrants are trying so hard to become part of this American dream, to become part of our communities, to learn the education system, to learn the healthcare system, to learn the legal system and be part of it. And we're just shoving them down. And in my district, District 64, is mainly Latinos that live there. It is a very large Latino population. So saluda a toda mi gente. It's something that we need to recognize. And also, we need to send authentic candidates to Tallahassee, right? They need to know who is representing them in their districts. Susan Valdez, every time I walk in the room, I get a different response every time. But the one thing I can say about her is she's always been in her community. She's always had programs or some sort of event to help the people in her community. And they recognize that. And I have been an advocate in my community for many, many years as I've come into this show and talked to you about things I've done, projects I've done. I want to continue doing that as a state legislature. I want to make sure that my community knows who I am. I want to make sure that they know that I'm here for them, that I'm fighting for them, that we're not going to stick around and just let someone live in a house with a tarp on it for years and do nothing about it. We have real problems in this state. We have an insurance crisis that is barreling people down, right? And that's the number one issue when I talk to people on the phone, and I talk to hundreds of people a day. And it's literally, as soon as you say homeowners insurance, I get a story. And there is no pathway right now to resolving that. Instead, we're fighting over where people go to the bathroom and what flags we're going to ban. And that needs to change.
Yeah, and you mentioned Representative Valdez, and she is well liked in the community. Works hard, and talk to certain Democrats. They're definitely a little chafed, or whatever word you want to use about the party switch. But that's something we've talked about previously with Democrats, and a lot of Democrats would say, somebody like you should wait your turn, too young, or something like that. And we've always landed at, or you have, that it wasn't time to wait. So I'm not surprised to see you running. I should say that you're not alone in this primary. Former Tampa City Council member Mike Suarez, who we will have to have on the show soon, and would welcome, equal time here on the radio. He's a well-known name locally. He lost in 2023 for a bid to return to the city council. In 19, he ran for mayor, but just got 5% of the vote in an 8-way race there. What makes you more qualified than the former councilman, Louis?
Look, I'm not running against Mike Suarez. I'm running because I'm a better representative for this county, or for this district. I speak Spanish. I've been working in this district. I know firsthand what people are going through. I know what it's like at the end of the month to wonder if I'm going to make rent, right? And that's who we need to be sending to represent us. We need authentic candidates that know that experience. It is also a time for change. You're going to hear a lot about experience in this race specifically, but experience means establishment, and establishment has got us to where we are right now. And I don't know about you, but I'm not in a good place. I'm wondering every day how much groceries are going to go up. I'm wondering every day property insurance, property tax, another big thing that we don't know what's going to happen, right? We need people that are going to be fighting for the people, right? This is a people-powered movement, to be fighting for them, not for lobbyists in Tallahassee. Because right now that's what's happening in Tallahassee. Lobbyists have taken over. It is out of control. There is no balance. I understand everybody wants to get paid, but there has to be a balance to everything. And Mr. Suarez is a great guy. I know him. I have nothing bad to say about him. I just feel I'm a better representative for the people of this district. I know firsthand what they're going through. I know the experiences that they face day to day, and that's who we need to be sending to represent us.
We should point out that the primary will happen on August 18th, 2026. The deadline to register to vote or change your party affiliation is July 20th, 2026. Our good friend Janelle Irwin, she reports that the district has a voter advantage for Democrats. They hold more than 37% of the voting block there. Republican voters, meanwhile, 29%. How much do you think that's still true, Luis? And how do you think that could play out in this election? Because I think Democrats have taken a lot of things for granted.
I think they have, and I will be the first to tell you that our party has a problem. It has a problem reaching out to young people. It tells them what to believe instead of listening to what they believe in, right? That's a problem. That's going to be the end of us if we don't change our route. And that 36-point lead, I think is important. It's important to see Latinos on the Democratic side because we are the party that's working for them. And I want people to know that I want to fight for working class people. I want to fight for my Latino brothers and sisters to have opportunities same way my family did. This country has been really great to me and my entire family. And that's because we came here with opportunity and not people telling us to get out. Right. And this is chaos that we're living. It's got to end. It's not sustainable. And we need to find a way to move forward together, to collaborate, even with Republicans. We need to talk to them like they're human beings as well, because they're not all bad. I'm a Democrat telling you that. We need to collaborate. Collaboration is the only way government functions. Right now, everybody's so far on the right and so far on the left that the people in the middle, the working class people of this country, are being shoved down and being experiencing extreme poverty. I know people that don't have electricity in their home right now. That's horrible. It's 2026 in the United States of America, the richest country in the world. And this is what we're doing. This is how we're wasting our energy instead of taking care of people. I've worked my entire life learning how to take care of people. From my mother, I learned it from her. I've worked in this county taking care of people, giving people resources, teaching them how to fish, as they would say, right? Making sure that they're capable of taking care of themselves, getting education. All these things are getting torn down right now, especially for Black and brown people.
And while we're talking about, sort of the way that we have government suppression going on here, I want to talk a little bit about the 287G program that enables local police and county sheriff's offices to collaborate with ICE in a couple of different ways, including the aggressive task force model, where you have some of the agents deputized. Some local police officers might be deputized to act in place of ICE agents. So we have a lot of people protesting on the left side of things. A lot of people are protesting 287G agreements, and even some people within the force may be protesting it as well, because it can take up some local resources. Mm-hmm. But then at the same time, you do have, the sheriffs in both counties supported, and the chiefs of police. Tampa, St. Pete, Pinellas County, Hillsborough County are all part of this agreement, and they suggest that it's lowering ICE presence in our communities. So how do you square up sort of the issue of 287G agreements and the lack of ICE presence in Florida because of that?
I know the police chief. I know the sheriff. They are good guys. I know that they are not out hunting people like in other counties in the state. The police force is here to maintain safety and security for the residents of this county. I feel that they are doing that. I feel that they are protecting us. They're not participating in the ICE raids in this county. Let's keep it that way. There's going to be a lot of pressure for them to do that. Right? But we need to maintain relationships with them as community leaders and say, hey, this is like, I know got pressure coming down on you, but come walk my streets with me. Come see how people live. These are not animals on the street that you go round up like you're the pound, right? These are human beings that you're talking about. And that's the problem. We have separated ourselves from being able to see our neighbor as a friend, right? If your neighbor's house burns down, you don't sit there and laugh at them. You help them rebuild it. You help them find things to make their lives better. You take care of each other. That neighborhood that I grew up in, that America that I grew up in is going away, and it's sad to see that because we're just so at each other's throat. It has to stop. The police force and the sheriff's department in this county, I don't think are all horrible people. I've said it before on this show. If you think that I'm against the police, I'm not. I just want the police to protect me just as equally as they would anybody else. And I think that's fair. That's fair to say that on both sides.
Luis Salazar there. I want to ask you one last question before we go to the councilman. This week, your campaign announced that it received more than 400 individual donations in a 6-week period. I'm interested to know what you think about that number, but also to note that, Mike Suarez, who, you've addressed earlier, has raised quite a bit more, $44,000, almost $45,000 to your about $16,000. How much are you worried about closing that gap as we head into the summer?
As I said earlier, this movement is powered by people, right? And that's why I have almost now 500 individual contributions, because people believe in the message and believe what I'm saying, and they want something new. Every time I talk to people, they want something different, something new. We cannot keep recycling candidates. We just can't. It's time for a new generation to take the reins. And I'm 44. I'm, again, not the youngest person in the world, but I'm willing to commit to bringing young people with me and showing them how to do this, to do what I'm doing, to be a better mentor. And that's another thing we lack in the Democratic Party is mentors, because they get greedy and they want to stay there forever. I see it all the time. The money issue, you know what? I'm fighting. I raised $16,000 in 6 weeks. I think that's pretty good. He had a whole quarter to raise that money. And this is all a money game. This is a problem with politics, especially in the state of Florida. You make a candidate viable by the dollar sign that's next to their name, not by what they want to do or how they want to help their communities. And that has to change. That is because we have consultants that have taken over our party, have taken over the election process, and they just rake in the money and take every penny they can by raising it, right? By getting these candidates to make them viable. They control the system. Again, that has to be broken. We have to get out there, knock on doors, talk to people, which I've done for years and I will continue to do because it's what I do best, right? I can organize. And like Brian Nathan's running for office right now. It's a special election, right? Organizing. That is the most important thing that we need to focus on right now because if we win that, it trickles down to the rest of us as candidates.
Luis Salazar there, running for State House District 64. Thank you so much for joining us on The Skinny today. I'm sure we'll be talking to you again.
Thank you so much.
And, talking about knocking on doors, young candidates, Luis, 44 years young. Another person who knows about knocking doors is St. Petersburg Councilman Richie Floyd, who won election to the District 8 seat there in 2021, was named vice chair of City Council to kick off the new year. Welcome back to The Skinny, Councilman. Thank you for joining us here in these last minutes here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I love to have a few minutes on the show. Really appreciate all the work y'all do, and it's been a really interesting show to listen to today.
Thank you. You're holding a re-election launch next weekend, Bananas Records. Do those first backyard meetings from the first run feel like a lifetime ago for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a big thing that I'm going through right now is my first campaign was during the pandemic, actually. And so we didn't get to have big parties, maybe a little bit towards the end after the vaccines came out. But now I'm planning this campaign re-election launch, and it's a lot of work, and we have a physical space, and we're going to have people come together communally. And I think it's actually going to really embolden us because we couldn't come together at the beginning last time.
We should say that in St. Petersburg, the election dates, the primary election is August 18th, 2026. You have to register by July 20th. The general's in November, and that registration deadline is October 5th. Councilman, your re-election campaign has similar themes to the first one, affordability, sustainability, this pushback against corporatism and profiteers, really. So two questions here. How much do you think you're able to make headway on those values in your first term here? And, with wins from guys like Mamdani, what role will those values play in this upcoming election?
Yeah, I think we've made solid progress over the last 4 years now. My first term is going to end up being 5 because we changed the election cycle. Right. Yeah, it's interesting. So, I think we've made solid movements in a positive direction. I was the youngest person ever elected to city council, the first openly Democratic Socialist elected in the state of Florida in 100 years. And so we had a lot of headwinds to begin with. But I think over time you start to learn where you can make change and where you can't. And I'll say, we've made some good solid gains. It's been slow going, but even yesterday, I was able to get a resolution passed through city council committee that changed our affordable housing priorities in the city, and recently got a policy changed to make neighborhood streets a little safer, make it a little easier for you to request a speed bump on your road in your neighborhood. Little things like that add up over time. We've made a lot of headway on moving towards a new energy provider in the city. We managed to pass a resolution on that. I think that'll be a core focus of the next campaign. And the fact that we already got a majority vote to move in that direction means a lot. It means that what we're doing is working, and we just need to keep at it.
That's Richie Floyd, by the way. He is running for re-election to the District 8 seat in St. Petersburg City Council, which he first won in 2011. Am I correct, Councilman? You don't have an opponent yet in this race?
No, not at this time, but we're early. You can file to run for the next few months, and so we're gonna run like we did last time. We didn't get a lot of our opponents until late in the race last time, but our plan is not about who's opposing us. Our plan is about what we're going to do for working people in our city, how we're going to make it more affordable, how we're going to make it a place that really works for everyone, and we're going to spread that message for as long as we possibly can, no matter who our opponent is.
We got a phone call here. We'll get Cody on the air. Cody from Largo, you're on the air with the Councilman, St. Petersburg Councilman Richie Floyd.
Hey guys, thanks for taking the call. I like what you guys are having to say. Appreciate the energy. An idea that I have that I think that we need to put on the table and this is how to get money out of politics, and I mean overnight, and also how to reestablish a good relationship with the community and the police. And my solution is conscription with sortition. So just like the IDF, right out of high school, you go into the military, kind of like a draft. But I think we can use that same system for public service. Our police could be our high school graduates, and then once you've been conscripted into the police force and you've gone into that, or whatever, low-level administrative, healthcare, ombudsman stuff, who knows? But once you do that, you understand the system, then you can qualify for higher levels of public service, like the executive branch, the legislative branch, the judicial branch. I think that would get money out of politics overnight, and I think it would heal our communities. I think that if we had people that grew up in the community policing the community, it would be a total change. Right now, we know that there's just a system where we've got war vets coming in, Hurt Locker style, looking for their next rush on the streets of Atlanta when they're from Podunk, Indiana, and so that's my idea. Just wanted to put it out there. Like what you guys have to say so far.
Thanks for the call, Cody.
So it's a good opportunity. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks. Yeah, Councilman, you ran a campaign, that was speaking about police accountability. You ran it during the pandemic. We're fresh off of George Floyd at that point. But you've really had a successful first term in so many ways. You're the vice chair today. What have you learned about the city that you love and that you live in and that you wanted to represent that maybe you didn't know before, maybe specifically to police and other things that Cody was talking about?
Yeah, I think, I always like it when I come on the show and there's callers, they present thought-provoking ideas. And so, the first thing I'd say about the money and politics piece is I couldn't agree more. We had to work hard to raise a lot of money, and we did it through small dollar grassroots donations. But, our opponents and other council members and elected officials across the state really raise their money through big dollar fundraisers and donations from people who have vested interests in the offices that they're working towards. And so it's a lot of work to push back against that. I put forward an idea that we could do public funding of elections in St. Pete to try to hamper that influence. Haven't been able to get a lot of traction there with my colleagues, unfortunately, but I'm still working on it. And then when it comes to the police, we've really come into a good opportunity with the police in St. Petersburg in that we started right before I got elected the Community Assistance and Life Liaison Program, or CALL program, where the police took themselves out of nonviolent mental health and truancy calls, neighborly disputes, and inserted a more trained professional through a social worker that's overseen by the police department, but the police don't actually interact with those calls. And so I've been able to work with the police department because our police department has a unique perspective that says they're not needed at every single call, and they have things that are important for them to be doing and places where it's not as important for them to be. And I think that's really an attitude that I hope that more police departments take on, because, one thing when you're talking about the way things have gone with the police lately is they're not trained to do everything, and we've been pushing society's ills upon them for a long time. Every problem, just have the police go to it. That's not good for our society. That's not good for police officers. That's not good for the safety and security of our neighborhoods, and we need to have a more expansive vision of community safety. And I think that's really coming to the forefront in all the progressive conversations that are happening across the country right now.
Thank you so much. If you're just joining us, that was the voice of Richie Floyd, St. Petersburg City Councilman for District 8, running for re-election, has a campaign relaunch event, or re-election campaign launch, I would say, Saturday, January 24th. Bananas Records, that's the 22nd Avenue North location. Don't go to the warehouse, people, because there won't be a party there. Richie Floyd, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure we'll be talking again, especially as you draw an opponent in this race.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate all the work y'all do, and I'm happy to come anytime.
Thank you so much. Luis Salazar was here with us, also running for the State House seat, District 64, trying to flip the seat blue again after the seat flipped itself.
Back to blue.
Yeah, that's right. And at the top of the show, we had Mitch Perry checking in from Tallahassee, and of course, right there in the meat of the show, Valerie Smith, editor-in-chief at the Sapphic Sun, a contributor for Creative Loafing Tampa Bay. We're going to run that story this afternoon about your trip to the Border Patrol recruitment event. Valerie, I look forward to having you on the show for a few weeks here as Mitch is out to play in Tallahassee. Would you do that for us?
Oh, yeah, I'm excited to be back.
Right on. And we are always glad to be back in the studio every Friday here on WMNF Tampa. Thank you so much for supporting the station. I do see Joel and Shilky in Studio One getting art in your ear. Ready for you guys. Always so good to see you. Always so good to hear all of you. Thank you for the call. Skip Sassy on the boards for us this afternoon. Anthony Mador on the phones. Thank you so much for supporting community radio. My name is Ray Rowe on behalf of Mitch Perry. I hope you have a really great weekend, and we'll see you in 7 days.
WMNF Tampa.